Goodbye 2016, hello 2017, and what a start it has turned out to be. Yet more terror attacks in Turkey and the Middle East. And as the US prepares for a change in the White House, how will relations between China and the US progress in the year ahead? Welcome to The Point on CGTN. I'm LIU Xin. You're watching the very first edition of the very first opinion program on CGTN. From today on and every weekday, I'll be sharing with you how I look at stories that are making headlines around the world. To mark the debut of the show, a live broadcast is underway on Facebook page of CGTN. So go to that page and you will see what's happening behind the scenes. Give me a thumbs up or leave me a comment or question and I will try to respond when possible. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Now let's kick the show off with our first segment, The World at a Glance. Let's start the year with a look at two different New Year messages delivered by the leaders of China and the United States. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that 2016 had been an extraordinary year for China as it had achieved progress on so many fronts. He urged the international community to join hands to build a more peaceful and prosperous world, emphasizing the desire to improve the livelihood of ordinary people. Donald Trump, meanwhile, tweeted, "Happy New Year to all, including to my many enemies and those who have fought me and lost so badly they just don't know what to do." Now, stylistic differences aside, do these statements reflect the respective state of the union of the two countries? Suffice it to say that from my perspective, it was refreshing to hear President Xi highlight inclusiveness and pluralism, that the world should work together so that everyone becomes better off as a result. This was in contrast to Donald Trump, whose words seemed to indicate that America is being pulled further apart from within. Watching the nearly daily spats between the outgoing President Obama and the incoming Donald Trump, I, for one, am worried about the US and the world by extension. We're in need of greater leadership to build a shared future for an increasingly plural world. But will it be forthcoming? Turning now to another New Year's speech, and the new UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed in his speech that the human and economic costs of conflict and terrorism, and asked all people and countries to put peace first in 2017. He said his priority will be a surge in diplomacy for peace. Now, to achieve that, he aims to foster a culture of prevention and to focus on preventing crises rather than managing them after they occur. Now, the UN needs to change, and there is widespread consensus on that. But how is the main question? By countries cutting back on funding or withdrawing their support, as some countries have threatened, or by stepping up cooperation to help the UN do its job and deliver on its objectives. Guterres spent a decade as the UN High Commissioner for Refugees and built up its capacity to respond to the largest refugee crisis since the end of World War II. He's an outspoken leader on the global stage. I met him in person many times, and I believe that's something the UN and humanity as a whole is desperately in need of right now. And as we speak of peace, the Islamic State has claimed responsibility for a terror attack at an Istanbul nightclub early on New Year's Day, killing at least 39 people and injuring 69 others. Now, a night of celebration instantly turned into one of carnage. The Islamic State has embarked on a new wave of attacks after they lost territory in Iraq and Syria. And it still has the ability to create chaos in Europe and the Middle East. So it's been a terrible beginning to the new year and a stark reminder that the world is seemingly much more dangerous than it was just 12 months ago. The attack against the Istanbul nightclub is an attack against humanity as a whole. It's not going to be easy, but only by uniting in its condemnation and in fighting terrorism together can the world escape from this modern scourge. You're watching The Point with me, LIU Xin. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll discuss our topic in the spotlight today, China-US relationship. As he continues to send mixed signals to China, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's policy of uncertainty has put bilateral ties at high risk. How does China perceive his victory, and how is it preparing for the transition? As Trump questions the One China policy and China's claims on the South China Sea, what will China do if Trump continues to challenge its core interests?
They are the greatest currency manipulators ever!
While he blames China for America's economic woes, is Trump serious about having a trade war with China? Will his anti-globalization message boost protectionism around the world? And given the changing global circumstances and regional geopolitics, where will China-US relations be heading in 2017? Now, since Donald Trump won the presidential race, relations between China and the U.S. have become somewhat strained. One person who is closer to the situation than most is China's ambassador to the U.S., Cui Tiankai. I was delighted to speak with him earlier today. I began by asking him what he made of the current state of bilateral ties and where did he think things would go in the next few weeks.
Well, I think relations between China and the United States are moving forward, generally speaking, on a stable track. But there are always ups and downs. This has been the case for this relationship over the last few decades. And we don't expect all smooth sailing going forward. What is important is for the two sides to focus on areas of cooperation and, if possible, expand areas of cooperation and manage differences in a constructive manner.
Well, we have the wish that we hope bilateral relations will continue to grow in a stable and healthy manner. However, on some core issues, for instance, we are seeing some very worrying signals coming from the U.S. Let's take a look at the Taiwan issue. For instance, President-elect Donald Trump has said that the U.S. doesn't have to be bound by the One China policy. He actually broke decades practiced by the U.S. and China by talking to the leader of Taiwan soon after he won the election. Now, you have said Beijing would never bargain with Washington over issues involving national sovereignty and territorial integrity because they are not bargaining chips. In case Trump continues to try to drive a wedge between Beijing and Taipei, what could or should China do to defend its interests?
Well, China has a consistent and a strong position on matters of national territorial integrity and sovereignty. This has been our consistent position, and this is going to be our position for the future. China will defend to the best of its ability our national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and will achieve national unification. I think this is the case for any country in the world, China or the United States or any other country. If you don't take these issues seriously, how can other countries take you seriously? So I think going forward, we will stick to this consistent position, and we hope others will have a good understanding of it.
Now, the South China Sea could be another hotspot for tensions in 2017. The U.S. is likely to be more aggressive there, while China is resolute in defending its sovereignty and maritime rights. How can the two countries avoid escalating tensions into a direct conflict?
First of all, the issue of South China Sea is a matter of territorial disputes and maritime disputes. This is not a matter of geostrategic rivalry between any major countries. So this is not an issue, and certainly should not become a conflict between China and the United States. This is the first thing I have to make clear. Secondly, recently, the situation in South China Sea is moving in the right direction. The countries concerned are engaged in constructive dialogue and communication, and we are working together on managing the issues in a constructive way. And we are working together on developing cooperative and productive overall relations among the countries concerned. So I just hope that others will contribute to this positive momentum of the situation, will not do anything that will hinder such positive development. and we will certainly not do anything that will be counterproductive.
Now, business relations are the ballast to bilateral ties. However, Trump and his team blame China almost entirely for the loss of jobs in the U.S.'s Rust Belt. Trump also threatened to place 45% tariffs on Chinese imports, sparking concern of a trade war between the two sides. Is such concern legitimate? What would be the potential consequence of a trade war between China and the United States?
Any trade war, especially a trade war between the two largest economies in the world, will be very damaging to both economies and will hurt the global economy as well. So nobody would benefit from a trade war. Number two, as for the process of globalization, I think it is driven mainly by two forces. First, the need to optimize allocation of resources on a global scale. The second factor is the application of technologies. So this is really changing the global economic structure and sometimes shifting jobs within national boundaries and across national borders. So that's why we have to make sure that more people will benefit from the process of globalization. But I don't think it's the right approach if anyone tries to raise protectionist barriers between countries. This will only hurt everybody. It will not help anybody.
Now, Trump has made some appointments which are arousing concern about his future trade policy with China. For instance, he created this post as a director of a national trade council to hire a long-time anti-China Peter Navarro, who has written books and made documentaries by the name of Death by China, which has caused a lot of concern, but also has been attracting a lot of attention from the public in the United States. How do you react to this kind of anti-China rhetoric during the campaign trail, of course, but also since Trump won the election, he continues to go down this path?
Well, I don't want to put label on any person. Let's make this clear. And trade, by definition, is mutually beneficial. If one side have all the benefits, the other side bear all the costs, there's no trade. Trade, by definition, should be mutually beneficial. And this is certainly the case for trade between China and the United States. Both economies have benefited a great deal from bilateral trade and from an open, inclusive international trading regime. There's no good reason for anyone to do anything to hurt this open trading environment, to make it exclusive instead of inclusive.
Now, President-elect Donald Trump has been openly challenging or criticizing China using social media. How do you view this behavior, and how do you plan to react to this in the future?
Well, now there are all possibilities of social media here in the United States and in China. Many people in China are also using social media to express their views and their support for a strong and stable China-US relationship. I hope people could also have a close look at this public opinion on Chinese social media.
We'll do a better job in conveying those messages. Now, 2017 is predicted by many to be a year of even more political tremors. How will developments in China-US relations affect peace and development in the world in general?
China and the United States are two major countries in the world. We are the two largest economies in the world. We are both permanent members of the UN Security Council. So we do have the responsibility, we do have shared responsibility to keep the relationship on the right track and moving forward. And in doing so, we would be contributing a great deal to global peace and prosperity. As President Xi said in his New Year's greeting, that China is committed to work with other countries to build a community of shared interests globally. And we are ready to work with the United States and other countries for that goal that will benefit the entire international community, and that will bring a world that is more peaceful and more prosperous.
For 2017, something very important for us is that we are a totally new TV channel called CGTN. As we look into 2017, I would like to know what is your expectation for our channel and whether you would like to express your New Year resolution for yourself and also for the Chinese media in general.
Well, let me wish you a great success. I'm sure you will be very successful in reaching out to your audiences, both in China and in the United States, and maybe your international audience. Today, people have all kinds of possibilities to get information, but still, mass media has a key role to play. And a piece of advice maybe to my friends in the media is that please do not look at everything through a zero-sum lens. The real world is much more complicated. A lot of things are interconnected and they do influence each other. So we have to have a more sophisticated view of the world, of the relation between China and the United States, and maybe of ourselves. Personally, I will continue to work for a stable and strong China-US relationship. This is my mission. This is my responsibility. I should always keep this in mind.
That was Cui Tiankai, China's ambassador to the US, giving his first ever interview to CGTN. I admired his calm and positive rationality and his view that US-China relations are much more sophisticated than purely black and white. I hope this attitude and vision is shared by us and by American politicians and commentators as well. Until that is certain, we can only hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.